What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, and I'd like to start by thanking all the people who've been involved in this deep dive, which is Han Solo, Seb, Phil, and Stuart. And Stuart is relevant here in the sense that once I finished going through Crush, he mentioned that he had the 40th anniversary edition of Crush available, so he sent that over. Now, I have the first track from the Pacific Age, big shout out to Phil, already ready to go, but I decided to go through the bonus tunes included in this 40th anniversary edition of Crush, though I am jumping over the first of these bonus tracks because it's Concrete Hands. Now, people may remember, and in fact, before I went through anyone else's material of OMD, my very first OMD reaction was for a vinyl I have in my collection, and it was an extended mix of Concrete Hands. And I have this memory of Seb saying, number one, it's an interesting way to start with OMD. Secondarily, he had not heard the mix, and I guess like the shorter version of the track, which I assume is the one here, but that it was originally released on like a compilation of B-sides in like 2001 or something. Nevertheless, because I have heard a longer version of Concrete Hands before, I'm skipping over it. But if the single or the B-side version is different enough that it's worth circling back and listening to that in a reaction, then I shall do that. But as I said, at some point we'll finish with the extra tunes here, and then we'll go on to the Pacific Age. Nevertheless, the next tune after Concrete Hands in this playlist, that again is on the 40th anniversary edition of Crush that Stuart provided, is Firegun, as one word. So it's an interesting phrase. I don't quite know what to make of it. I do remember, I think it was, maybe it was Seb, maybe it was Han Solo, maybe it was both, but I remember people very early on saying they tended to do very experimental things with a lot of their B-sides, and my recollection of Concrete Hands, the version I heard anyway, is that it was very artful / experimental and less, catchy and like pop tune. Now, I've since learned, even with their album tracks, that their songs can run that gamut quite expansively, meaning they have songs that are very catchy and, you'll find yourself singing the chorus and it's like, oh, this is just destined to be like a radio pop hit. And then tracks that are way down the other end that, again, even for an album track, they sound experimental, unusual, eccentric. So, yes, even in their tracks that are not B-sides, it seems like they're not afraid to go more experimental. Nevertheless, I sort of expect this to be like that. I expect this to be one that might not have the like typical pop song formula and maybe be more artful and experimental. In any case, I don't really know what to make of the title, so let's give it a listen. This is OMD, the track is Firegun, and it's included on this 40th anniversary edition of their 1985 album Crush. What a fascinating tune. So, in one way, it was what I was thinking. It is not your typical synth pop track. It's artful, it's a bit eccentric, and yet it had more lyrics than I thought it would once it was like 30, 40 seconds in. It was like, okay, it really is going to be one of those abstract, experimental type of tunes. And it was that, but in a way, maybe not as much as I thought. Certainly the vocals are delivered in an unusual style, even for them. And they have this quality of like liturgical service or something. It really felt like they were, like this, not chant, but kind of this deep, like religious style singing. And in fact, I think it's both McCluskey and Humphreys. Like, I think McCluskey's doing those super deep vocals, right? But then over time, I noticed a secondary and like higher vocal. So I'm wondering if that was Humphreys or maybe everyone was singing on the track. Either way, again, it sounded like this mantra style singing. And even the lines, again, like over the sea and the ocean and the fire and the, what is it, sisters shall slay their brothers and mothers will slay the sons. It all feels like prophecy. It feels like, declarations of what is to come in the world of humanity and the earth. So, and in fact, what was the line? Like, I think there was even a line about, like, hearing us praying or something like that. So, yeah, it felt like it was in the, like, sacred style and with lines that were prophetic or, about the, almost like the end times or something like that. But it also, at the same time, like as a track, kind of felt light and, sort of like it was just, smoothly sailing along. So there was a bit of a tension in that regard. But definitely heard reference to fire. I don't know if I heard reference to Firegun specifically, so I still wonder about the title. But yeah, I enjoy, there was like these like bass pulses or chords, and definitely the like choral feel of the track gave it a certain intensity or power to it. So yeah, a really interesting one. If there is some more narrow narrative or meaning here, I couldn't piece it together on a first listen, but as I said, it felt like I was hearing like a section of Revelations or something, but then delivered in this synth art sort of manner. So it didn't quite sound like chant, it didn't quite sound like sacred music per se, but it felt like it was a mixture of like electronic pop with something of a grand, like scriptural or like preternatural type of level. So a really interesting one. As I said, let me know about Concrete Hands if it's like different enough. And to be fair, like not only is it different enough, but it's been like 3 years since I did that Concrete Hands extended mix. So maybe I'll just go back and do the reaction to the regular Concrete Hands, especially because now that I think about it, I remember people saying that like the extended one was different from what they knew. So maybe it makes sense to react to the one that was more like heard, the single release or whatever. So yeah, ultimately I think we will do that. As I said, we have a number of other tracks in here. In the moment, I don't know if there's any I've already done. Maria Galante is next. I don't think I've reacted to that. Drift, that sounds familiar. I'm not sure. But then Secret Extended Mix, So in Love, the Special American Dance Mix, So in Love, an Extended Mix. Oh right, La Femme Accident or Accident, the 12-inch mix, and then, the Concrete Hands Extended Mix. So that is already in here. But as I said, I reacted to that on my vinyl copy for my very first OMD reaction. So basically we've got like a half dozen or so additional tunes in here that we'll go through. And then as I said, I do have the Pacific Age album ready to start after that. So that is the plan for the next little bit with OMD. And again, thank you to Seb who shared OMD, thank you to Han Solo who shared OMD, thank you to Phil who shared OMD, and to Stuart. So you were all greatly appreciated, as well as everyone else who's been following this deep dive. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time. Peace.